Okay, so invoking Apex is what we are going to talk about. Invoking Apex, in this topic we are going to talk about what are the different ways of executing an Apex program. All right. So out of these different ways, one of the ways is definitely the Visual Force page controller. That's something that we have already done. We are going to talk about the other ways. So different ways of invoking Apex include, first is the anonymous code block. The simplest one is an anonymous code block. Anonymous code block means an Apex code which you do not store. Usually, we write an Apex program and we put it in a class. Anonymous code block is something that you just write and you want to execute it one time, and you don't need to store it in a class or in methods and all those things, right? The prime objective of storing it in a class is that things that you need to call again and again, right? But if there is an Apex program that I just want to run one time, then I will write an anonymous code block for that. Okay. Other way is Apex trigger. Apex trigger is something which an Apex code which can work on a DML operation. What's a DML operation? Data manipulation language. What is a DML operation? Anyone? Quickly. Anyone? DML operation?
Mm. Is it more of sending queries and digging deep into the data to get some insights?
No.
Insert, upsert, update, delete.
Yes. Any DML statement means anything that manipulates the database. Okay. So the term DML might be sounding very complex, but it's very simple. Any statement that makes any changes into the database, that can be as simple as, okay. So it can be as simple as, sorry, can you see my screen still? Yeah. Okay. So DML statement is very simple. It's basically any statement that makes changes in the database. Changes in the database can include creating a record in the database, editing a record in the database, deleting a record from the database. Okay. So that's a DML operation or a DML statement. Insert, update, delete, these kind of statements. All right. So Apex trigger is something which Apex trigger is a code which can get executed on a DML statement. When a record is inserted, when a record is updated, when a record is deleted, you might want to have some Apex code executed. That's Apex trigger. Third way of invoking Apex is Visual Force classes or the Visual Force controllers primarily. This is something which we already have done and we understand what exactly that means. Calling Apex on a Visual Force page and use the program. There is another way of using Apex which is called Asynchronous Apex. What is asynchronous Apex? Asynchronous Apex talks about the Apex that does not require the user interaction, or the Apex which does not require, which does not depend on any particular action. They can, execute asynchronously. So they are not in sync with some other action. They can get executed asynchronously. Okay. Synchronous Apex is something which is in sync with some other action. Alright. Let's say when I click on a button, the Apex gets executed. That's synchronous because it's in sync with the click of button. When I update the record, Apex gets executed. That's synchronous. But some code which will automatically, execute in the backend, that is asynchronous. That does not have any connection with some other event. Yeah.
Sorry to disturb you, Jeet,
Hmm.
but I'm not able to see the screen. Like the organizer has also changed in my screen.
Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, but with Ravi as organizer.
No, I'm talking about, I'm asking others. Are the others getting the screen?
Yeah, I could see. I could see. Okay.
Great. Then I'll
Yes,
change
yes,
the,
I can.
Yeah, we could see. I could see too.
okay. Let me change the presenter once and I'll come back so that he can also see.
Oh yeah, you are not the presenter.
Now, can you see my screen?
Yes, yes. Now it's visible.
It's okay? It's okay for everyone? All right.
Yeah.
Yes,
So we understand what's asynchronous, right? So see, what we are going to do is we are going to talk about a few terminologies, and I just want you to understand. I will make sure that I try to break those terminologies in the simplest form possible, and you just have to make sure that you understand the meaning of those things. Okay, and if you understand these terminologies, most of the interviews you will be very relaxed, comfortable. Because people actually, I've seen people actually struggling with those basic terminologies, asynchronous apex, and they think, oh my god, what is this? It's nothing. It's just that an apex code that gets executed asynchronously. Asynchronously means it's not in sync with any other event. Okay, and synchronous apex is anything which is in sync with another event. So any apex code which gets executed on click of a button, is that synchronous or asynchronous?
Synchronous.
Sync with what?
Any apex code gets executed on click of a button, synchronous or asynchronous?
The records from all the records which we are loaded, we are unloading it from start.
Synchronous.
Synchronous, yeah. Some microphones are not muted, which need to be unmuted. Some other noises coming.
Yeah,
Maybe Vipula. Okay.
no,
Okay. I think then it was something else.
me. I don't speak this language, but they are
Uh,
talking in.
Sorry. Okay, no worries. Okay. Still the time the
I
microphones
think
are
it is
unmuted.
my.
That's fine. That's
Okay, I think it was
fine.
my wife. She was
No,
working here.
because I could hear the female voice. I thought it was Vipula. Sorry. Okay. Now, um, a get method on a page, is that synchronous or asynchronous? Get method,
Synchronous?
synchronous. Okay, correct. Um,
Synchronous.
okay. A code gets executed, before the record is inserted. Synchronous or asynchronous? Every time I try to insert a record, I execute a code, some background check of that record. Synchronous or asynchronous?
Synchronous.
That's also synchronous because
Synchronous.
that's in sync with the insert operation. Okay, so that's all synchronous. Asynchronous is something which will automatically run in the backend. Now you must be thinking that what kind of a code which will automatically run in the backend and how will that happen? So that's something which we are going to talk about. Okay, so for now just have this understanding, and these are different ways of invoking asynchronous effects: feature methods, queuable effects, effects scheduler, batch effects. Right? And then we have another way of invoking Apex, which is through Apex email service. Okay,
Uh, Sajid, all the Visual Force classes would be a synchronous one, right?
not asynchronous, synchronous.
Yeah, synchronous. Yeah.
Yes. So in Visual Force, everything, whatever we have seen, almost everything is synchronous. Okay.
Synchronous. Okay. Okay.
All right. Now, then there is another way of invoking Apex, which is through an Apex email service. What is Apex email service? There is an option in Salesforce where an Apex code can get executed on receipt of an email. That's also synchronous. That's again, not asynchronous. All right. So let's start with the anonymous code block. Anonymous code block is the simplest thing. Here you write a code and you just execute it. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to create method, no classes, nothing. Why? Because I don't want to reuse it. I will save some code. I will create a class if I have to reuse it. Sometimes you might just want to write some code and then execute it. So an anonymous code block is Apex code that does not get stored in the metadata. You do not store it in the metadata, or you do not store it in the system. If metadata is difficult for you to understand. So any code that we don't need to store in the system.
So, but so
Hmm.
what is metadata? I see this term more often. So what does
Metadata
metadata mean?
is data about data.
Yeah, that's the definition. That's what I could read. But
Okay.
what does it mean? Data about data.
Data about data means, see, you have an accounts table. Okay, we have an
Mm-hmm.
accounts table, and in accounts table I have, let's say, 5 accounts: IBM, Deloitte, Dell, Accenture, Wipro. Okay, these 5 accounts are my data. This is the data, right?
Yes.
and then I have the table. Table has a few fields. Actual data is what? Those accounts,
Mhm.
IBM, Dell, Deloitte. But I have that table in place, right?
Mhm.
So there is some data stored about the table also, information about the table, which field,
Mhm.
what kind of field. That is also data, right? In a way.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's the metadata, correct?
So
That this the key.
metadata means the values for the IBM, like the
No,
revenue.
no.
No?
Metadata is the structure of the table and the information about the table. There is some information about the table also, right?
Mhm.
There's there is information about IBM. So IBM information is data, but there is
Yeah.
information stored in your, somewhere you must have stored information about your table also, right? Which
Mhm.
field, how many characters in that field. You create a field, you
Okay.
put so many values
Mhm.
inside that, right? Which field
Mhm.
required or not, how many characters, text or phone
Mhm.
number or email ID or number or date.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
metadata.
Okay.
Got it? So
Okay.
everything which is actually all the data which is actually put into place, which takes care of the actual data, that's metadata. Because that's also data, na? In a way, that's also data.
Mhm.
Correct? So that's
Yes.
also the metadata. Like,
Okay.
like if you have a locker, okay,
Mhm.
and you put money inside that. Okay.
Mhm.
So money is your asset.
Mhm.
Money is an asset, right?
Yes.
Now, locker is also an asset. So that's an
Mhm.
asset to protect your actual asset. So that's same way metadata is the data which is actually used for storing the actual data. So that's what metadata is. So all
Okay.
the programs and all these things which are around that data is metadata. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yes.
Okay. So now any code block that does not get stored in the metadata means basically you do not want to store that code block, but that can be compiled and executed using developer console. So this code block can be executed and compiled using the developer console. So we have an option of compiling and executing it. That is called anonymous code block. Okay. You can use anonymous code blocks to quickly evaluate effects on the fly or to write code that changes dynamically at a runtime. Okay. So you can use anonymous
So
code block.
Jeet
Mhm.
executed using developer console, the button which says developer console, and when we write Apex code, so there is I can see some, but one button says developer console.
Yes,
Is
yes.
that
I'll
the
come to that part. Developer console, I'll show you.
okay?
Fine. So this code block is something which does not need to be stored and it just needs to be executed. Why will we do that? Any code which is something which is very dynamic in nature and keeps on changing, there is no point actually saving it as a class. So it's better you just don't save it, execute it once, and then next time when you use it, you should again execute as an anonymous code block or something that you don't need very frequently. So there is no point actually writing that code and keeping it. Okay. So for an example, okay, let's say I just want to create an account. I define account A equals new account, name equals my new account, type equals customer, direct, industry equals let's say technology. Okay. And insert A. Okay, let's say this is my code. I want to execute this and I just want to execute it one time. It's not something that should get repeated. So where do I execute this? That's it. This is an anonymous code block. Okay. Where do I execute it? Give me 1 minute. Let me just log in into the Salesforce account. All right. So where do we execute the anonymous code block? We just go to, you just need to click on your name. You will see developer console here, right? Click on developer console. On the developer console, this is basically, the environment where you can write the code and all. So on the developer console, you can click on debug, open execute anonymous window, or you can simply do a control E, and you can put your Apex code here. It is the code that I've written. This is the code. Where is my developer console? There it is. Okay. How do we open the developer console? Let's see it once again. You can click on your name and then click on developer console here. Then you have the option of going to debug and open execute anonymous window. Shortcut for that is control E, E for elephant. Now you just put the code here, okay, and click on execute. That's it. So the code will get executed. That's it. All right. So in this case, a new account will be created with this name and technology and sorry, name and industry and type. This will get created in the database. Okay. So let me just execute it. Done. So execution got done. Let me go and check if the account got created or not. See, my new account, it just got created. Correct. So any code that you feel that just needs to
So
be
Jeet,
executed once.
actually, so if we want to create just one account, so that's the easy way. Instead of writing that big classes, just execute it on the runtime.
That's easy way, but if you want to create an account every time someone clicks on a button, then this will not work, right? So because in case you want something to be repeated and the end user should do it every time, then this will not work. So this is just one time thing. Anything that needs to be done one time, it's absolutely the best way of doing that. Most of the times, the code that we write will be basically for uh, performing things which are which are repeat activities. Okay, so anonymous
So,
code block, though it is an option, just one second, though it is an option, but not something that you use very frequently. Why? Because most of the things will be repeat activities. People will actually need to click on a button to create the record or delete the record or something like that. Correct? Yep.
yeah, Jeet. So basically, this kind of an activity would happen from a developer's side, right? If in case, because none of other users would have a direct access to the direct, the developer console, right?
Absolutely correct. And they will, more
Okay.
importantly, they will even not know how what to write there. I mean, you cannot
Okay.
type anything and try to execute it, right? So you'll need
True.
to know
Yeah.
the programming. So someone who is not a developer will not know that as well, right? So that's how it is. Okay. So that's about anonymous code block. Now let's come back to the, okay. Here we go. Hmm. So the next thing that we are going to talk is the apex trigger, like the other way of calling apex. Let me just fix that. Okay. The next is apex triggers. Okay. Apex trigger. What is apex trigger? I just told you something that anyone. Apex trigger.
She can work on a DML.
DML.
Yeah. So a code, Apex code, basically that gets executed on a DML statement, right? That's what an Apex trigger is. Okay. What is Apex trigger? An Apex trigger is the Apex code that executes before or after the following types of operations. Okay. Which all operations? Insert, update, delete, and delete. So these are all DML operations, correct? So this is the code which gets executed before or after these things. Okay, so you have the option of defining whether you want to execute the code before the DML statement or after the DML statement, or DML operation or after the DML operation. Right? So let's say if you have a code that should check whether all the values in the record which is being created, try and understand this. If you want to write a code which should check whether all the values in the record which is being created are correct or not, whether that should be checked before insert or after insert.
After insert.
After insert, yeah.
Okay, let me repeat. I want to make sure check whether all the values which are being inserted are correct or not. So
Being
did you check?
inserted then before
Before insert.
before insert.
Definitely, right? So all the security checks should happen before insert. There's no point doing a security check after the record has already been inserted. Correct? Okay. So that's the thing. So it depends on our requirement where we actually want to call the Apex code. Before the insert operation or after the insert, or before update or after update. So we have the option of calling your Apex code before or after these operations. Alright? That's what Apex trigger is. Okay. Types of Apex
Hi,
triggers.
Jeet. Can I ask you a question?
Yep.
Yeah. So where do we use generally like after insert? Like, so for example, let's say
If
like
you
we
want to
insert a
update some other
record.
record, please go ahead. Sorry.
No, just like trying to think like when it will come into play, like after insert.
It
Like
will
for
come into
example.
picture into a lot of scenarios. You know, if you want to update some other record based on this
Oh, okay,
record
okay, okay.
inserted,
Oh,
you can do that.
yeah. Okay,
Okay.
basically insert in like a
Let's
record,
say
and based on that, like
let's
happen something and some other. Okay.
let's say I have a logic that every time a contact is created, okay, under an account, the contact should take okay, or maybe every time an account is updated, the phone number in the contact should also get updated from that phone number
Okay.
account. Let's say, for
Yeah.
example. So that should happen after the account update has happened. That sort of thing. Right?
Yeah, I see that now. Thank you.
So there are two types of Apex triggers. One is before trigger in the same logic, before trigger, and the after triggers. What is before trigger? Before triggers are used to update or validate record values. See, this validate thing is the key here. Right? It's basically used to update or validate record values before they are saved. So before it is saved, if you just want to do a quick update on the record, or you just want to validate the record that whether the values are correct or not, then your trigger should be a before trigger. What is after trigger? After trigger are used to access field values that are set by system and to effect changes in other records. Okay. The records that fire after triggers are read only.
I didn't get after trigger.
After trigger will be used to effect changes in some other records. Correct?
Other records means?
Other record can be any other record, not that record which triggered the code, but any other record. It can be a related contact, it can be a related case, a related opportunity.
Like we write the trigger in accounts and that is triggered to the contacts or
No,
opportunity
that
that are related.
it can be to a related record. Yeah, yeah. So it can affect changes in some other record. Correct. So in case my trigger is called from the account, but I want that trigger to make changes in opportunity, that should be an after trigger. Because first of all the account gets saved, then only it can go and make changes in the opportunity under that. Correct? But this record that fired that after trigger become read only, which means you cannot make changes on the same record. After trigger operation, you cannot make changes on the same record which called the trigger, because that record becomes a read only.
So after the trigger it become read only, or before we start writing the figure it should be read only then we can write after trigger on that.
No, the record which calls the trigger becomes read only. All right. So that record is read only. You can make changes on some other records which are related or not related or something. Correct? So that record does not have to be a read-only record. That because it's calling the trigger, so that record becomes a read-only record, and it can affect changes on some other records. It cannot change the same record. If you have to update any value on the same record, then it should be before trigger. Once the insert has happened, after that, right after that, you cannot say that okay, change this record. Whatever you have to update in that particular record, do it before trigger. If it's an after trigger statement, you can make changes on other records, but not on the same record, which is triggering which is calling the trigger. Got it? Does that make sense? Okay. So now let's move into the other part. So there are two types of trigger: before trigger and after trigger. Now let's understand the trigger syntax. It's very simple. To define a trigger, use the following syntax. Okay. You don't understand from here, let me type it and show you. The trigger has a very simple syntax. Trigger, name of the trigger, which can be anything, T1 let's say, on name of the object. If you want to create a trigger on account, type account. Within bracket, you'll have to write the event. Event means on which event. We talked about different events, right? Insert, update. When do you want the trigger to get executed? That's it. And your code here. Whatever code you want to execute should come here.
Before or after, where how it is
It's
defined?
written here. It's written here.
In event?
Yes.
Okay. Before insert, after insert, we
Yes.
can write that like that. Okay.
Correct. So this is the syntax, right? Very simple syntax. Trigger. So this is a trigger keyword. After that, you write the name of the trigger. Trigger name you can give anything. The way we name class anything, C1, C2, whatever we want. The same way you can name trigger whatever you want. On object name, which object you want that trigger to work on, account or opportunity or contact. Right? What will be the event, and then you just go ahead and write the code. That's it, and you close it. Got it? It's simple syntax. Let's have a look into the events. What all events are we talking about here? So trigger syntax. Now if you say trigger space trigger name on, so space on space object name within bracket trigger event. When do you want the trigger to get executed? Start the curly bracket, write your code block, close the curly bracket. That's it. Okay. Where trigger events can be a comma separated list of one or more of the following events. So in the trigger event, this part you can put one event or multiple events. If you have 2-3 events, when you want the trigger to get executed, then you should put comma in between. Then, okay, so comma separated list. So these are the events. Let's have a quick look at the list of events. Before insert, before update, before delete, after insert, after update, after delete, after and delete. So these are the 7 events. That's it. Either the trigger will get executed before insert or after insert or before update, after update. Okay, when do you want that trigger to get executed? That event you have to define. Clear? So that's all about trigger. The basic of trigger. Let me know if there is any difficulty understanding this. Simple? Okay. Now let me write a very small kind of a trigger. Uh, okay. Let's work with the logic, small logic. Okay. My logic is if amount of an opportunity is less than 10,000, you want to display an error. Okay, this is my logic. This is what I want to do. So if the amount of an opportunity is less than 10,000, an error should be displayed. Right? So I want to write a trigger for this. So help me write this trigger. What do I write first? How will I write it? What will I write first?
Trigger.
Okay.
Trigger.
Trigger, right?
Then
Name.
Yeah, any trigger name. T1.
O1. Okay. I mean,
On
name can be anything. Fine.
on
On.
opportunity.
Event will be what?
Display.
Before insert.
Before insert.
Yeah, because the checking should
Before
happen
update.
before the record is actually inserted into the database, right? Okay.
No, why before insert Jeet?
Because if amount of an opportunity is less than 10,000, I want the error to be displayed. So the error should be displayed before the record is inserted, right? There's no point displaying the error after the record is inserted. Correct?
Okay, okay.
So we want to restrict the entry of the record because amount is less than 10,000.
So, Jeet, just trying to understand when a user is trying to, if I am a user
Hmm.
and I have access to opportunity, I'm creating a new opportunity.
Hmm.
On the amount part, I am putting in 9,000, right?
Okay.
There it should then and there it should throw an error, is it? Is
Right.
that what?
Right. Exactly.
So, Jeet, isn't it the same we wrote learned the validation rule? It's
Yeah.
kind of that.
Yeah. This before insert is similar on the validation rule side, but validation rule does not have an option of after insert also, right? So
Okay.
before insert is pretty similar on the validation rule kind of thing on those lines. So it's validating the data. If you read this thing also, just now what we were talking about. If we go back to the previous slide, types of triggers. Before trigger, I told you what is the thing that before trigger does. You can use it for validating records. So before insert or before statement can be used for validating the data as well. So this one which we are doing, the example, that's pretty similar to validating the data also. Correct?
Hmm.
Now we know the event, we know the trigger, name, and we also understand which object. So the entire thing is ready. Only thing that we have to do is we have to define the code here. What will be the code inside
If
there?
statement. If statement.
If what?
Declare the
And
variable, right? Opportunity.
yeah, declare the variable. Opportunity O.
Opportunity O equals to what?
New opportunity.
But if you do like that, if somebody is trying to edit and change the value, maybe from 10K to 9K, that should also be considered, is it?
That's another situation. I think we'll talk about that a little later. But let's understand how are we going to declare the variable here.
All right. Okay.
My variable opportunity O as object should be the one which is actually getting updated or inserted, correct? So for that we have a very nice thing available which is called a context variable. Okay, context variable basically means there are predefined variables for the records in context. Which opportunity I have to compare? The one which is getting inserted, correct? And that is the opportunity which is in context, right? So for that we have a variable called trigger.new. What's the name of the variable? Trigger.new. Okay. So we don't have to define another variable here. We will just use trigger.new. Trigger.new is the list of records in context. So we will write it like this: for opportunity O within trigger.new. So you don't define it as a new opportunity. You can just write for opportunity O in trigger.new. Okay, and that's the context variable. And in this, I will go ahead and check if amount of O is O dot amount. Rest I think you already understand. If this is greater than, or sorry, not less than 10,000, O dot add error. So for throwing error, this is the statement or this is the method. Too small opportunity. Got it? That's it. So life is so simple with trigger. You don't have to define the variable newly as such. There is already a context variable which can be used. So we just write for opportunity O in trigger.new. If O dot amount is less than 10,000, throw an error. That's it.
So where do we go and write the trigger in Apex or
Yeah, I'll show you where to write the trigger. But from the code perspective, are we clear?
yes.
Okay. Now where to go and put this code? To put this code, you just need to go to one second. One second, I think I got logged out. I'm logging in. Okay, so this is a trigger on opportunity. So to write this code, you should go to setup, customize, opportunity, and there you have an option of triggers. Alright, so whichever object you are creating the trigger for, you should go to that object and click on triggers. Okay, so this trigger option is available under each object, each standard, each custom object. You can write the trigger there. So just go to opportunities and click on triggers, click on new. It gives you the basic syntax also. Let me put it here. Yes, that's it. You have the option of keeping the trigger inactive also. If you don't want your trigger to work, if you have written a trigger and you don't want this to work as of now, you want to deploy it after a week or so, you can just keep it inactive. If you want this to work, then make it active. Try to save this. Absolutely okay. Now try to create an opportunity with an amount less than 10,000.
So, Jeet, why do we need trigger here? We can do it with the validation, creating validation rule. That's the easy thing.
Yeah, definitely, that's correct. But the point is that the example that we are doing right now can be done using validation, but validation does not give you all the options, right? Or
Yeah.
maybe, what we'll have to understand is everything can be done using declarative, correct? Why do I need visual force page? I have page limit. But
Mhm.
there is a limit, which visual force page cannot, which a page layout cannot handle. The page layout has a limitation, right? That's the reason we program. Same logic applies here. Correct? And in addition to validation rule, there are a lot of other things which can be done. As I told you, validation rule, do you have an option of validation rule controlling the delete statement?
No,
Validation only
no,
works for insert and update, right? Does it
no.
work for delete statement? Does it work for after insert? Does it work for after delete? No. Does it work for undelete? No.
Mm.
So that's it. Okay. So validation is just a what do you say, small functionality, and trigger can give you the option of writing whatever you want.
Mm.
Correct?
Mm.
Okay. So tell me if this is okay with everyone. You understood the basic? All right. So that's it for today. We will actually, discuss a little more on trigger in our next session, and we will, further uh, see, how we can actually enhance the triggers and all. So just go back and practice this much, and we meet same time, Sunday evening US time, and Monday morning for
Yeah,
India.
Jeet,
Uh,
yeah, just quickly, is it possible for you to share that PowerPoint presentation, or at
uh,
least, just to
this will be
paste
on
it
the
in a Word
video.
doc?
This will be in the
Okay,
video, so you can quickly. I mean, there are very little. There's very little text actually in the PowerPoint, so you can quickly have a look into that part.
okay, okay.
Okay. And all
Jeet
this is, I'm
videos
actually
means
going to share a reference link to you guys, sometime in next week. And all these have been taken from there only. So I've just taken one or two lines, you will have the complete text. So you don't need to actually go through
Mhm.
this. You can actually go through the entire book where all these things are written. It's just for understanding. So, yep,
Jeet videos.
sure, pakka.
Okay.
Right. Chalo then. See you all.
Bye.
Have a nice
Chalo,
weekend,
thank
everyone.
you,
Thanks. Bye.
thank you,
Jeet, you have
Ankit.
to share me the link.
That's Srinivas, right? I'll just
Yeah,
do it. I think I'm missing one. In case I miss on that, you please drop me a message on WhatsApp also. All right.